The courtroom smelled of old wood and desperation. Melissa Thompson stood before Judge Carolyn Winters, her hands trembling against the defendant's table as her daughter Anna pressed close to her side. Across the aisle, Rebecca Clark sat perfectly composed in a designer navy suit flanked by Christopher Anderson, whose face had already flushed red with barely contained rage, and Amanda Mitchell, who dabbed at her eyes with a tissue that might have been genuine or performance. Their lawyer, a man whose expensive briefcase probably cost more than Melissa had earned in the past 2 years, arranged papers with the confidence of someone who'd never slept in a car behind a Walmart. The judge's voice cut through the silence. Petition for guardianship and emergency custody case number 74-92. Melissa's vision blurred. 7 months ago, she'd been chopping firewood behind a cabin she didn't know she owned, teaching Anna how to identify pine from cedar by the smell. Now she stood in a room where strangers would decide if she deserved to keep her daughter. Anna's small hand found hers, squeezing 3 times. Their code, "I love you." Melissa squeezed back 4 times. "I love you more." Have you ever been judged by the people who were supposed to protect you? People who decided you weren't good enough when they were the ones who broke you in the first place. The memory pulled her back 7 months earlier to a morning that had started like all the others. Dim, gray light filtered through the Subaru Outback's windows where condensation had formed overnight from their breath. The Seattle Walmart parking lot came alive with the pre-dawn shift change, delivery trucks backing up to loading docks, the world moving forward while Melissa Thompson and her 9-year-old daughter remained frozen in a space that measured 6 feet by 4 feet when you didn't count the front seats. Anna woke first, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had lost one ear somewhere between their 3rd eviction and the 4th. The rabbit had been white once. Now it carried the gray patina of survival, washed in gas station bathrooms with hand soap and dried on dashboard vents. The girl sat up carefully, vertebrae crackling from another night, curled in the back seat, and pulled her notebook from the backpack that served as her pillow. The pages held nothing but houses. 2-story colonials with wraparound porches, modest ranches with flower boxes, Cape Cods with dormers. All of them featured 3 stick figures holding hands in front of the door, though recently Anna had started adding a 4th figure taller than the others, labeled "Someone Nice" in careful print. She sketched while the parking lot transformed around them, adding windows with curtains, a chimney, releasing curlicues of smoke. Her stomach growled, but she'd learned to ignore it the way she'd learned to ignore the ache in her back from sleeping at odd angles, the way she'd learned to time bathroom trips so no one would notice they lived here. Melissa woke to the sound of pencil on paper and allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of stillness before the day's choreography began. Heat water in the camping kettle plugged into the cigarette lighter, baby wipes for faces and hands, help Anna change into school clothes behind a beach towel held up for privacy that fooled no one but themselves. A protein bar split in half, Melissa's portion slightly smaller, though Anna never noticed the inequality. The coffee came from powder mixed with hot water weak enough to see through, but warm enough to pretend it mattered. 3 blocks to the bus stop, close enough that Melissa could walk Anna there and still make it back to the library before it opened, where she'd spend another day sending out resumes that disappeared into digital voids, filling out applications that asked for current addresses she couldn't provide without lying. Anna shouldered her backpack, the zipper broken on one side, and held together with a safety pin scavenged from a gas station bathroom. She looked up with eyes that had seen too much for 9 years. Jessica asked if she could come over after school. The words landed like a physical blow. Melissa knelt on the wet pavement, her scrubs from her last nursing job 2 years ago threadbare at the knees, and pulled her daughter into an embrace that threatened to crack her open. "Sweetie, I told her we're moving soon. Remember, everything's packed up in boxes." Anna's voice stayed steady, matter of fact, a child who'd learned to lie to protect her mother's pride. "I said maybe after we get settled in the new place." They'd had worse. Portland when the Subaru broke down and they'd slept in a bus station for 3 nights. The week in Tacoma when Melissa had food poisoning and Anna, 8 years old, had walked to a church to ask for help. The time a parking lot security guard knocked on the window at 2 in the morning and told them to move along, and Melissa had driven for an hour before finding another place to park, and Anna had wet herself because they'd already used the bathroom and couldn't go back. Melissa walked her daughter to the bus stop and watched her climb aboard with children who had homes to return to lunch boxes instead of cafeteria tickets. Parents who weren't one car breakdown away from complete disaster. Then she walked back to the Subaru and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry before pulling herself together for another day of trying to claw back to stability. 20 months earlier, Melissa had been a different person. An apartment in Belltown, small, but hers. A job at Swedish Medical Center night shift in the ICU. Anna in 2nd grade at a good school. They'd been building something slowly after leaving Anna's father when the man's fists came out whenever he drank, which was every night. Then her father, Richard Thompson, called. "Stage 4, stroke," the neurologist said. "Maybe 2 months." Melissa took family leave, then quit when 2 months became 8. She moved Richard into her apartment, converted the living room into a hospital room, spent her savings on medications insurance wouldn't cover. Christopher and Rebecca and Amanda and Kenneth visited once early on, then stopped coming when it became clear dying wasn't quick or clean. Richard died on a Tuesday in November, holding Melissa's hand, whispering that she was the strongest person he knew, that she'd raised Anna right despite everything. The life insurance paid out $72,000, split 5 ways among the siblings, $14,400 each. Rebecca called first, "Emoy, chai convey muy motngin," then caught herself switching to English. "I need to borrow $11,000. The real estate market's tanking. My office is closing. 2 months, I swear I'll pay you back." Christopher, "Tau can muy bang in. Lawn sharks, Melissa. They're threatening to break my legs. I'm your brother." Amanda crying, "9,000 medical emergency. I'll pay you back in 3 months." Kenneth, $8,500. My marriage is falling apart, please. Melissa had given $41,500 total, draining her inheritance and taking out a credit card advance for the rest. They'd all promised 2 months, 3 months, definitely by summer. 6 months later, Melissa's texts went unanswered. Her calls hit voicemail. Rebecca posted photos from the Bahamas on Instagram. Christopher bought a new truck. Amanda showed off a Louis Vuitton bag. Kenneth's social media featured dinner at restaurants that charged $40 for an appetizer. Melissa had tried one more time, a group text, "I really need help. Behind on rent. Can anyone pay back what you borrowed? 3 read receipts. 0 replies. The eviction notice came 30 days later. St. Catherine's Women's Shelter occupied a converted church on Seattle's South Side, run by Sister Margaret Wilson, who'd spent 42 years telling women that God worked in mysterious ways, and sometimes those ways looked like bureaucracy and perseverance. She allowed Melissa to use the shelter's address for mail since a P.O. box cost money they didn't have, and no employer wanted to send correspondence to a Walmart parking lot. The envelope waiting on Sister Margaret's desk was cream-colored heavy stock that felt expensive. Return address, Harris and Associates Attorneys at Law, Sandpoint, Idaho. Melissa's first thought was that someone was suing her, that somehow she owed money she didn't know about, that the situation was about to become exponentially worse. She opened it standing in the shelter lobby while Sister Margaret pretended to be busy with intake paperwork. The letter began, "Dear Miss Thompson, you are the sole beneficiary of Robert Williams's estate." Melissa read it 3 times before the words penetrated. Property in Bonner County, Idaho, 35 acres with cabin structure, free and clear of all debts. Travel fund enclosed $1,800, Robert Williams. She tried to place the name Doug through memories of family gatherings she'd mostly tried to forget. A vague impression surfaced: an older man at her father's funeral, standing in the back of the church, not speaking to anyone. Maybe she'd met him once before, that her father's uncle, someone who'd moved out west decades ago and never came back. The check for $1,800 was real solid weight in her hands, more money than she'd had at one time in 18 months. Sister Margaret looked up from her papers, no longer pretending. "What is it, child?" "My great-uncle died. He left me property, a cabin in Idaho." The older woman came around the desk and read over Melissa's shoulder, her hand coming to rest on Melissa's arm. "This is divine intervention." Melissa wanted to believe that, wanted to let hope in. But hope was dangerous when you were barely surviving. The cabin could be nothing, a shack with no plumbing, a trailer falling apart in the woods. Or it could be something that would finally give Anna her own room, a place where they wouldn't wake up to security guards knocking on the window, where Melissa could stop lying about why friends couldn't come over. She called the number from Sister Margaret's office phone. A man named William Harris answered, his voice weathered but confirmed that Robert Williams had passed 7 months ago from lung disease. The property was ready to transfer, taxes prepaid for 25 years through some kind of trust fund. All Melissa needed to do was come sign papers, and the cabin would be hers. The call ended, and Melissa sat in Sister Margaret's office, staring at the check, thinking about the last time she'd felt hope and how it had ended with sleeping in a car. But Anna deserved better than rationalizing their various states of homelessness. Anna deserved a door that locked and a bed that didn't fold. Anna deserved a mother who at least tried. Melissa called Rebecca before she'd thought it through. Still operating under the delusion that family meant something, that blood counted for more than it had proven to. Her sister answered on the 5th ring voice, already impatient. "Melissa, what is it? I'm showing a house in 20 minutes. Dad's Uncle Robert died. He left me property in Idaho, a cabin and land." The silence stretched long enough that Melissa thought the connection had dropped. Rebecca's voice came back sharp. A cabin in Idaho. Melissa, that's pathetic. You can't handle a studio apartment. You're going to manage property. Just sign it over to me. I'll handle the sale. We can split the money. The casual assumption that Melissa couldn't manage her own affairs, that Rebecca should automatically take control, sparked something hot in Melissa's chest. It's not yours to handle. Robert left it to me and Anna specifically. For God's sake! Rebecca's warmth evaporated completely. You're living in your car. You're not exactly making great decisions. Someone needs to step in before you screw this up too. Christopher's voice joined in the background, muffled, like Rebecca had put her hand over the phone, then more clearly as she switched to speaker. Is that Melissa? What's she want now? She inherited some shack in Idaho from Dad's weird uncle. Thinks she's going to manage it herself. Christopher's laugh was even harsher. Let me guess, you want money to get there. Another loan you won't pay back. Anna had been in the library bathroom. She emerged during the conversation, walked up during the words, "Another loan you won't pay back," her small face going rigid. I don't want anything from you. Melissa's hand tightened on the receiver. I just thought you should know. Amanda's voice, now youngest sister, the one who'd borrowed $9,000 for a medical emergency that turned out to be cosmetic surgery. Honestly, Melissa, after everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me, Melissa's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. You took $41,500. All of you said you'd pay me back and then disappeared. Those were loans. Christopher's voice turned sharp. Not our fault you can't manage money. You got the same amount we did from Dad, and somehow you ended up homeless. That's on you. Anna's voice cut through high and clear. You're mean. All of you are mean. The phone went silent. Then Rebecca's voice, dripping false sweetness. Well, if it isn't the little tattletale. You took Grandpa's money. Anna's voice shook, but didn't break. You promised to pay Mom back, and you didn't. And now you want to take our cabin. Rebecca's contempt came through the phone line like radiation. Melissa, get control of your daughter and sign over the property. You're not equipped to handle this. Melissa hung up. She turned to find Anna 3 feet away, backpack slipping off one shoulder, tears streaming down her face. But her jaw set with determination that made her look exactly like Richard Thompson in his final days, when he'd told Melissa she was stronger than she knew. I'm sorry, baby. You shouldn't have heard that. They're trying to take our cabin. Anna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The one great Uncle Robert left us. Are you going to let them? Melissa knelt on the library floor and took her daughter's face in her hands. No, I'm not going to let them. That cabin is ours. Robert wanted us to have it, and we're going to drive to Idaho and see it and make it our home. Even if it needs work. Anna's voice was fierce despite the tears. We can fix things. You're good at fixing things. Melissa pulled her into a hug, this brave, loyal, impossibly strong little girl who'd never had a real childhood, who'd learned to lie about having a home and defend her mother to adults who should have been protecting them both. You're right. We can fix things, you and me. The Subaru Outback had seen better years. The odometer read 193,000 miles. The check engine light flickered on and off with its own mysterious logic, and the rear bumper hung slightly crooked from where Melissa had backed into a pole during a particularly bad week. But it ran mostly, and that was all that mattered. They packed everything they owned in 20 minutes because everything they owned fit in garbage bags. Clothes, Anna's school supplies, Melissa's nursing textbooks she'd refused to sell no matter how desperate things got. Photographs of Richard holding infant Anna with love so pure in his eyes it hurt to look at. The letter from William Harris went in the glove compartment where Melissa could reach it if she needed proof this was real. Anna claimed the back seat with her notebook, opening to a fresh page, titling it carefully, "The Journey to Our New Home." Below that, she drew the Subaru with the two stick figures visible through the windows and mountains in the distance. They drove out of Seattle as the sun came up Interstate 90, stretching east toward mountains that cut the sky into geometric shapes. Anna pressed her face to the window and watched Washington State scroll by urban sprawl, giving way to farmland, giving way to forest, her first real journey beyond the city limits of the place she'd been born. "Mom, do you think there will be bears?" "Maybe. Idaho's pretty wild." Anna's eyes went wide, delighted rather than scared. "That's so cool. We're going to live somewhere with actual wild animals." They drove for hours, stopping only for bathroom breaks and the cheapest food they could find at gas stations. Melissa let Anna navigate with a paper map purchased for $3, teaching her to read highway numbers and calculate distances, turning necessity into education, the way she'd learned to do over the past 18 months. Near Spokane, the check engine light stopped flickering and stayed solid. The engine made a sound like metal grinding against metal. Melissa pulled off at the next exit, coasting into a service station, her heart sinking as she calculated $1,200 left after gas and food. If the repair was more than $800, they wouldn't make it to Idaho. The mechanic, a man named Paul Harris, with grease under his fingernails and granddaughter photos on his desk, spent 20 minutes under the hood, then emerged, shaking his head. "Ma'am, your transmission's slipping. Gonna cost $800 to fix properly." Melissa felt the world tilt. $800 meant arriving in Idaho with $400, no margin for error, no buffer if the cabin was uninhabitable. Paul looked past her to where Anna had fallen asleep in the back seat, still clutching the map. "Tell you what, I'll patch it for $200. Won't last forever, but it'll get you to Idaho." "Where you headed?" "Sandpoint. My great-uncle left me a cabin." Something in Paul's face shifted. He glanced at Anna again, then back at Melissa. "I got granddaughters. Can't let you stuck here. $200 and I'll throw in an oil change. But get that transmission looked at when you can afford it." Melissa started to cry. Couldn't help it. Tears of gratitude and exhaustion, and the shock of someone being kind without wanting something in return. Paul pretended not to notice, just went back to work. Idaho appeared different than Washington. Something in the quality of light, or the way the sky opened up. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and massive, their peaks still holding snow even in October. The trees were different too, more pine than fir, and the air smelled cleaner somehow, like it had traveled less distance through human machinery. Anna kept her face pressed to the window, making small sounds of amazement every time they rounded a curve and the landscape revealed something new. "Mom, look! That mountain has snow on the top even though it's fall." Sandpoint appeared as they crested a hill, a small city nestled in a valley with mountains on all sides. Bigger than Melissa had expected, with buildings that looked like they'd survived since gold rush days, mixed with modern construction. She found William Harris's office on a side street downtown, a brick building with his name on a brass plaque by the door. Anna held Melissa's hand as they climbed stairs to the second floor, both of them nervous, both trying not to show it. The office was small but neat. Leather chairs, in the waiting area diplomas on the wall showing degrees in engineering and law. An older woman at the reception desk smiled when they entered. "You must be Miss Thompson. Mr. Harris is expecting you." William Harris was 70, if he was a day, with silver hair and a face weathered by decades of outdoor work. He shook Melissa's hand with a firm grip, then knelt to Anna's level and offered his hand to her too, treating her like she mattered, like she was part of this. "It's very good to meet you both. Robert talked about you, you know. Not often, but when he did, it was always with respect." Melissa tried to process that. "I only met him twice that I remember, at my father's funeral and maybe once before that. Robert was a private man, didn't much like crowds or conversation, but he paid attention to people. He saw things." Harris straightened up, gestured to chairs. "The property's ready for transfer. All the paperwork's in order. I just need your signature in a few places, and then I'll drive you out there. It's about an hour and a half, then another 30 minutes on Forest Service roads." "What's it like?" Melissa's voice came out, smaller than she intended. "The cabin." Harris considered the question carefully. "It's remote, very remote. No power lines running out there, though Robert installed solar panels about 15 years back. Hand pump for water from a well. Wood stove for heat and cooking. It's rustic, and it's not going to be easy, but it's solid. Robert built it himself back in '62, and he maintained it right up until he died. It's more than a shack if that's what you're worried about." Melissa signed where Harris indicated her hand, shaking slightly, making her signature look jagged and uncertain. Anna watched with wide eyes, understanding in her child's way that something important was happening, that their lives were changing in this moment. When it was done, when the deed had been transferred and notarized and filed, Harris pulled out a brass key from his desk drawer, old and worn smooth by decades of use, and handed it to Melissa. "Welcome home, Miss Thompson." They left the Subaru in Sandpoint at Harris's suggestion. The Forest Service roads weren't kind to low-clearance vehicles. They piled into his pickup truck, a battered Chevy that had clearly seen better decades but still ran strong. Anna sat between them, bouncing with barely contained excitement, asking questions faster than Harris could answer them. "Did Robert have any pets?" "No, he lived alone." "Are there really bears?" "Yes, black bears mostly, but they generally stay away from people." "Could I learn to ride a horse?" "Well, there's no horse, but maybe someday." The drive took them through increasingly wild country. Paved roads gave way to gravel. Gravel gave way to dirt tracks barely wider than the truck. The forest closed in on both sides, pine and fir and aspen, the late afternoon sun slanting through branches in golden bars. Harris drove with the easy confidence of someone who'd made this trip many times. He told them stories about Robert filling in the outline of a man Melissa had never really known. He was an aerospace engineer, worked for Boeing in the 50s, saved every penny, then bought this land in '61, built the cabin over 2 summers, living in a tent while he worked. Kept the Seattle job another 15 years, came out here every weekend. Retired in '76 and never left again. Why did he leave it to us? Anna's question was the same one that had been circling Melissa's mind since the letter arrived. Harris glanced down at her, then at Melissa. He said you reminded him of a different time when people kept their word. He watched your family from a distance, weddings, funerals, reunions, and he said you were the only one who gave without keeping score. That your siblings took, but you gave. He respected that. Melissa felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back. Robert had seen her, had noticed, even from a distance, even when she'd felt invisible to everyone who should have cared. The truck rounded a final curve, and the forest opened into a clearing. There it was, 2 stories of hand-hewn logs, darkened by weather and time to a deep honey color. A steep metal roof, green with age but clearly still sound. A stone chimney rising from the center like a promise of warmth. A wide porch wrapped around the front, the railings carved with intricate patterns, and behind the cabin, mountains rose purple and magnificent against the evening sky. It was beautiful. It was impossible. It was theirs. Anna gasped a small sound of pure wonder and scrambled out of the truck before it had fully stopped. Melissa followed more slowly, her legs unsteady, unable to believe what she was seeing. This wasn't a shack. This wasn't some falling-down disaster. This was a home, a real home, built with care and maintained with love by a man who'd decided, for reasons she'd probably never fully understand, that Melissa and her daughter deserved it. Harris handed Melissa the key, brass and heavy in her palm. "I'll leave you to it. There's firewood, stacked food in the pantry to get you started. I'll come back in a few days to check on you, bring any supplies you need. But for now, it's all yours." Melissa turned the key over in her fingers, then looked down at Anna, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "Want to do the honors?" Anna took the key with both hands, approached the front door like it was something sacred, and carefully fitted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, well-oiled, despite decades of use, and the door swung open with a soft creak. Warm air rolled out, carrying the scent of wood smoke and pine and something else. Something that felt like peace. Anna stepped over the threshold first. Melissa followed right behind her. Together they entered Robert Williams's cabin. Their cabin now. Anna whispered, her voice full of awe and gratitude and hope. "We have a home." But here's what broke her completely. When Maya asked why Aunt Victoria and Uncle Marcus didn't help anymore, Elena had no answer. The memory surfaced unbidden as Melissa stood in the cabin's main room, watching Anna explore with the unrestrained joy of a child who'd never had space to run. Robert Williams had given them more than a roof. He'd given them proof that good people still existed, that character could be seen and valued even from a distance, that sometimes the universe conspired in your favor instead of against you. The cabin revealed itself slowly over those first days, each room a careful study in self-sufficiency. Robert's workshop in the back held tools organized with precision, each one clean and oiled and hung on pegboard with its outline traced in marker, so you knew exactly where it belonged. The root cellar stayed cool even in afternoon heat, shelves lined with mason jars full of preserves. Robert had put up himself vegetables grown and canned, with the patience of someone who understood seasons. Upstairs, his bedroom held almost nothing personal. A narrow bed with a military-made precision to the blankets. A dresser with clothes still folded. A single photograph of a younger man in work clothes, standing next to a partially built cabin, the same cabin that now surrounded them, frozen in the moment of its creation. Anna made discoveries daily, her child's curiosity, uncovering things Melissa's practical mind might have missed. A carved wooden box under the eaves held medals wrapped in cloth, bronze star, purple heart. A bookshelf in the main room concealed a fold-down desk behind a false front, the surface scarred with decades of use, and covered in Robert's careful handwriting. Lists, calculations, observations about weather and wildlife, and the slow passage of seasons. She found bird nests tucked into the porch rafters, a family of mice living in the woodshed who scattered when she opened the door, a trail through the forest that led to a creek so clear you could count individual stones on the bottom. It was Anna who first noticed something odd about the main room's dimensions. She'd been measuring things with a tape measure from Robert's workshop, making a map of the cabin in her notebook with careful attention to scale when she frowned and redid her calculations. The exterior wall measured 40 feet, but the interior rooms only added up to 35. 5 feet unaccounted for, which seemed like too much for just insulation and log thickness. "Mom, I think there's a secret room." Melissa was replacing a broken pane in one of the upstairs windows when Anna came up with her notebook open, brow furrowed in concentration. The tape measure proved Anna right. Melissa walked the perimeter of the main floor, counting her steps, then did the interior and came up 5 feet short each time. They studied the walls together, looking for seams or breaks in the logs, but everything appeared solid and continuous. The stone fireplace dominated the north wall, massive and beautifully constructed from river rock, fitted together with barely visible mortar. Melissa ran her hands over the stones while Anna examined the carved mantel with its patterns of leaves and vines and birds. They were everywhere in the carving, dozens of different species, rendered in such detail you could almost identify them. Hawks and owls, songbirds and woodpeckers, but one, a small wren, near the bottom right corner, seemed different. The carving was slightly deeper, the wood around it showing wear as if someone had touched it repeatedly over years. Anna pressed it experimentally and felt it give slightly inward with a soft click. The sound that followed was subtle but unmistakable, stone grinding against stone somewhere behind the fireplace. A section of floor in front of the hearth, separated from the rest with a hairline crack that became visible as dust that had settled into the seam, suddenly broke free. The panel was 4 feet square, perfectly fitted, and it lifted on some kind of counterweight mechanism when Melissa worked her fingers into the crack and pulled. Stone steps descended into darkness, narrow and steep, carved directly into the bedrock foundation. Melissa found a flashlight in Robert's workshop, tested it to make sure the battery still held charge, and stood at the top of those steps, trying to decide if she was brave enough to go down. Anna pressed against her side, not scared but vibrating with excitement, and Melissa felt her daughter's absolute faith that whatever waited below would be good, would be more of Robert's gifts, would be another piece of the puzzle falling into place. The stairs ended 12 feet down in a chamber that took Melissa's breath away. The ceiling was vaulted and supported by hand-hewn beams that must have taken months to shape and place. The walls were smooth stone, and shelves lined them floor to ceiling, organized with the same meticulous care as the workshop upstairs. Wooden crates stacked carefully, each labeled with numbers and dates in Robert's precise script. Leather-bound books arranged by size, glass-fronted cabinets holding objects Melissa couldn't immediately identify in the flashlight's beam, and In the center, a massive oak desk with papers arranged in neat stacks and a journal lying open as if Robert had just stepped away. Anna moved to the desk while Melissa stood frozen, her mind trying to process what she was seeing and coming up blank. The journal's open page showed columns of items and numbers, dates ranging from the early 1960s through the 1990s, each entry meticulously documented. Anna picked it up carefully, both hands supporting the leather binding, and brought it to her mother. The title page read, "Private Collection and Estate Records, Property of Robert Williams. Begun January 7th, 1963. Updated through September 2nd, 2024. Below that, in slightly different ink, as if added later for Melissa and Anna, "Should you find this, everything here is yours now. I trust you will know what to do." Melissa's hand shook as she turned pages, the flashlight balanced on the desk, casting shadows that made the numbers seem to dance. Entry after entry, each one listing an item purchased, the price paid, authentication details, and current estimated value. A landscape painting by Winslow Homer, bought at an estate sale in Portland for $380 in 1968. Current value $520,000. A first edition of The Great Gatsby, purchased for $250 in 1970. Current value $180,000. The numbers grew as she flipped forward. Paintings by artists Melissa vaguely recognized from college art history classes she'd taken during nursing school. Stock certificates from the 1970s and 80s companies that had seemed like risky bets at the time but had become household names: Apple, Microsoft, IBM. Anna pulled open the nearest crate, using a pry bar she found leaning against the desk, old enough to know to be careful, but too curious to wait. Yellowed newspaper from 1968 wrapped around a painting oil on canvas mountains, and sky rendered in dramatic strokes that made the scene feel alive. The signature in the corner matched the journal entry, Winslow Homer. Melissa lifted it carefully, the frame solid wood gone dark with age, and leaned it against the desk where they could see it better. The painting alone, according to Robert's notes, was worth enough to buy a house. A nice house, maybe several. They spent hours in that underground room, opening crates and cabinets with increasing amazement, each discovery more impossible than the last. A sculpture in bronze patina, green and beautiful. Ancient coins in velvet-lined cases, Roman and Byzantine, and Chinese, each labeled with acquisition, date, and provenance. First edition books by Twain and Hemingway and Fitzgerald, their dust jackets protected in archival sleeves. A framed map from 1702 showing territories that didn't exist anymore, hand-colored and gorgeous. Financial ledgers revealed stock purchases that had multiplied, 100-fold bonds that had matured and been reinvested, a patient and disciplined approach to building wealth that had compounded over decades. The final page of the main journal stopped Melissa's breath completely. Robert's neat handwriting, dated September 2nd, 2024, 6 months before his death, according to Harris. Final accounting as of this date. Total estimated value of collection based on current market conditions and professional appraisals completed August 2024. Paintings and sculptures, $12,800,000. Rare books and manuscripts, $6,200,000. Coins and precious metals, $4,100,000. Stocks and bonds, $13,900,000. Miscellaneous items $1,400,000. Total estimated value $38,400,000. Melissa read the number 3 times, her vision blurring, before she could make herself believe it. $38,400,000. Hidden in a vault under a cabin in Idaho, left by a man who'd lived alone for 40 years and apparently never told anyone what he'd been building down here. She looked at Anna, who was carefully examining a collection of jeweled pieces in a glass case, and tried to understand what this meant, what it changed, what Robert had given them that went so far beyond a roof over their heads. It defied comprehension. A separate letter tucked into the journal's back cover, addressed in Robert's hand, for Melissa Thompson, should she find this collection. Melissa's fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper, decades old, but preserved perfectly in the underground chamber's constant temperature. Dear Melissa, I watched you grow up from a distance, saw you at family reunions, weddings, funerals, all the obligatory gatherings that families convince themselves matter. I saw you care for your father in his final illness, saw how you raised Anna alone with dignity when her father proved himself unworthy. I saw how your siblings took and took, how you gave and gave, how they made you believe that was what family meant. This collection represents my life's work, 60 years of patience and faith that beauty and value are worth preserving. I leave it to you because you understand what truly matters, not wealth but character, not taking but giving. Your siblings will come when they find out. They'll claim you're not capable of managing this, that you need their help, that family means sharing. Stand firm. This is yours, earned not by blood, but by being the kind of person who deserves it. Use it to give Anna the life she's earned by being brave enough to have you as her mother. With respect and hope for your future, Robert Williams. Melissa had to sit down on the stone floor, the letter clutched in both hands, and let herself cry for the first time since they'd arrived. These weren't the silent tears she'd learned to shed in the Subaru, while Anna slept the grief and frustration and fear she'd carried for 18 months. These were different, complicated relief and gratitude, and a kind of grief for a man she'd never really known, but who'd seen her more clearly than anyone in her life, except maybe her father. Robert had watched her fail and struggle and lose everything, and instead of judging her, he'd decided she deserved better. He'd built this gift over decades and saved it for someone he believed would use it right, and somehow, impossibly, he'd chosen her. Anna found a second letter in a small wooden box behind the desk, this one addressed in the same handwriting to Anna, the brave girl who finds my secret. She brought it to Melissa, who read it aloud, her voice still thick with tears. Dear Anna, if you're reading this, you've found my hidden room. You must be clever and curious, which are fine qualities. This room holds many valuable things, but the most valuable thing is the family who found it together. I never had children of my own, but I watched your mother raise you, and I saw how much she gave to make sure you were fed and safe and loved. I hope you know how lucky you are to have her, and I hope she knows how lucky she is to have you. Whatever happens with this collection, remember your mother is a good person in a world that often punishes good people. Protect her. She spent her whole life protecting you. Be brave, little one. The world needs more brave children. Your friend across time, Robert. Anna pressed close to Melissa's side, small and warm and steady. He knew about me even though I wasn't born yet when he started this. He knew there would be someone like you, someone worth everything I've been through. They climbed back upstairs as evening fell, closing the hidden entrance carefully behind them, and sat together on the porch, watching the sun paint the mountains purple and gold. Melissa's mind raced through implications and complications, through the certainty that this would change everything, that her siblings would find out somehow, that the peace of these first days was about to shatter. But for now, for this moment, she let herself simply sit with her daughter in front of their home, while mountains stood eternal and patient in the distance, and tried to accept that sometimes, rarely, impossibly, the universe gave you exactly what you needed when you needed it most. The decision came that night after Anna fell asleep. Melissa sat at Robert's folded-down desk with the letter in her hands, reading it again by lamplight. "The wolves will come. Stand firm." She could tell her siblings, could try to share to make peace, to rebuild family bridges. Or she could remember that they'd taken $41,500 and disappeared, that they'd mocked her homelessness and demanded she sign over property she'd never seen, that Rebecca's voice on the phone had dripped with contempt when she'd called Melissa incompetent. Robert had known, had predicted this exact scenario, had left evidence and instructions because he'd observed these people for 40 years and understood exactly what they were. Melissa picked up the phone and called William Harris, told him what they'd found. He arrived the next morning, descended into the vault, and stood silent for a long moment before speaking. "Robert spent 60 years building this. He trusted you with it. We need to protect it immediately. Professional attorneys, appraisers, a trust structure that can't be challenged. And Melissa, until everything is legally secured, you cannot tell anyone, not family, not friends, no one." She agreed without hesitation. The vault door closed. The wren bird pressed back into place. The floor sealed seamless once again. Above ground, Melissa Thompson and her daughter began learning how to live in a cabin in the woods. Below ground, $38,400,000 waited in the dark, a secret that would stay buried until the moment came to defend it. The appraiser arrived 3 weeks after Melissa signed the deed. Timothy Clark drove up from Boise in a sedan that had seen too many miles on bad roads, carrying equipment cases that looked more expensive than his car. William Harris had recommended him, vouched for his discretion, promised he understood the need for confidentiality. Clark spent 3 days in the vault, photographing each piece, cross-referencing provenance documents, making notes in a leather portfolio that never left his sight. He worked methodically, speaking little, his face betraying nothing, as he examined paintings worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. On the 4th day, he presented his report, typed on official letterhead with authentication stamps. Total appraised value, $38,400,000. Breakdown as follows. Melissa couldn't focus on the numbers. The reality of it kept slipping away, too large to hold in her mind. 3 months ago, she'd been calculating whether she could afford a $2 coffee. Now she owned assets that required professional security and insurance riders she didn't understand. Clark packed his equipment, accepted his fee of $4,000, and drove away. Harris assured Melissa the man was trustworthy, had signed non-disclosure agreements, understood the sensitivity. What Harris didn't know was that Clark had mortgage payments 3 months overdue and a daughter whose college tuition bill sat unpaid on his kitchen counter. That he'd received a call 2 weeks earlier from a private buyer interested in any significant collections that might come across his desk. That the offer had included a finder's fee of $10,000 for information leading to a successful acquisition. Clark made it as far as Spokane before his conscience lost the argument with his bank account. He pulled into a rest stop and sent an email to the buyer. $38 million collection, Idaho, recently inherited by woman with no experience. Owner name Melissa Thompson. Location Sandpoint area. The buyer passed the information to a contact in the art world. That contact mentioned it at a gallery opening in Seattle. A journalist overheard. By the following Monday, a blog post appeared on Northwest Collectibles, Hidden Fortune, discovered in Idaho cabin, reclusive engineer's collection, worth estimated $38 million. The post didn't name Melissa specifically, but it included enough details that anyone who knew Robert Williams could make the connection. Former engineer, Sandpoint area, recently deceased, inherited by woman and daughter from Seattle. The Idaho Statesman picked up the story on Tuesday. By Wednesday, it had gone regional. Melissa learned about it when Barbara Miller called from the Pinehurst Library, her voice tight with concern. "Melissa, have you seen the news? They're writing about you." The article sat above the fold on the Statesman's front page, accompanied by a photograph of the cabin taken from the road with a telephoto lens. Sandpoint area cabin yields multi-million-dollar collection. The text referenced a Seattle woman and her young daughter, who had inherited the property from a great-uncle Robert Williams, a former Boeing engineer who had lived in isolation for 40 years. Melissa's phone began ringing, unknown numbers one after another. Some were journalists asking for interviews. Others claimed to be investment advisors, estate planners, security consultants. One man introduced himself as a representative from Sotheby's auction house. Another offered to help manage the overwhelming responsibility of sudden wealth. She stopped answering after the 12th call. That night, a truck sat parked on the forest road a quarter-mile from the cabin. Melissa saw headlights through the trees around midnight, watched them idle for 20 minutes, then drive away. The same truck returned the following night and the night after that. George White knocked on her door on the 4th morning, his usual suspicion replaced by something that looked like grudging concern. "Someone's been watching your place. Saw the same vehicle 3 nights running. Thought you should know." Sheriff Stephen Taylor came out that afternoon, documented the tire tracks promised to increase patrols in the area. He didn't say what they both knew, that whoever was watching had already gotten what they wanted, which was confirmation that the cabin was real and Melissa was there. The question wasn't whether the wolves would come. Robert had predicted that with certainty. The question was how many there would be and how hard they would bite. Murtaugh. The Mercedes pulled up 5 days after the news broke, black and sleek and completely out of place on the dirt road. A man emerged wearing a suit that probably cost more than the Subaru was worth, carrying a briefcase that gleamed in the autumn sunlight. He introduced himself as Jonathan Scott, representing Mountain Ridge Development, LLC. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced, his eyes already calculating as they swept across the property. "Ms. Thompson, I'll be direct because I respect your time. My company is acquiring land in this area for a luxury resort development. We're putting together a 500-acre parcel, and your 35 acres sit right in the middle of our planned footprint." Melissa kept her arms crossed, Anna visible through the window, doing homework at the kitchen table. "I'm not interested in selling." Scott's smile never wavered. "I understand. Attachment to property, especially inherited property, runs deep. But let me make you an offer that might change your mind. $2,500,000. That's $71,000 per acre, well above market rate for undeveloped forest land. $2.5 million. 3 months ago, that number would have solved every problem Melissa had, would have meant Anna could go to any college she wanted, that they'd never worry about rent or food or broken-down cars again. Now it felt like an insult. "This is our home. We're not selling." Scott's expression shifted, the warmth draining away. "Ms. Thompson, let me be clear about something. With or without your cooperation, this development is happening. We control the access road. We control the water rights to that creek you're using. We control all the land on 3 sides of your property." He let that sink in before continuing. "If you choose not to sell, we'll build around you. Your access could become complicated. Your water source could be rerouted. Your property value could be severely impacted. I'm offering you a generous exit before things become unpleasant." Melissa felt anger rise in her chest, hot and sharp. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining reality. $2.5 million is my current offer. It won't stay on the table forever. Think about your daughter. What kind of life do you want for her, where you're constantly fighting with developers and lawyers, or one where she has financial security and you can live anywhere you choose?" He pulled a business card from his pocket, set it on the porch railing. "You have until the end of the month to decide. After that, we proceed with or without you." The Mercedes drove away, leaving dust hanging in the air. Melissa called William Harris immediately. His voice came back grim. "They can't force you to sell, but they can make things difficult. Easement laws protect your water and access rights, but enforcing those rights means lawyers and time and money." "I'll look into this company, see what we're dealing with." Anna appeared in the doorway, her homework forgotten. "Mom, is that man going to take our cabin?" "No, baby, nobody's taking our cabin. We're going to fight if we have to." But the weight of it pressed down another threat, added to a pile that already felt too heavy to carry. The collection, hidden below them, was worth $38 million, and instead of solving their problems, it seemed to be creating new ones faster than Melissa could count. Rebecca found out on a Thursday morning when a real estate client texted her a link to the Idaho Statesman article, "Isn't this your family?" She read it standing in an empty house. She was showing the words swimming as her brain tried to process the numbers. 38 million, Robert Williams, Seattle woman and daughter, Melissa, her sister, her homeless, incompetent, living in a car sister was sitting on $38 million. The phone call to Christopher was incoherent with rage. He conferenced in Amanda. Within an hour, they were all on the same line, talking over each other, their voices climbing in pitch and anger. Rebecca's real estate training kicked in, forcing calm into her voice. Even as her hands shook, "Listen, listen. We need to handle this smart. Robert was Dad's uncle. That makes his estate family property. We have legal grounds to contest the distribution." Christopher's voice came harsh. "I need money now. Loan sharks don't wait for probate. They're threatening to break my legs if I don't pay $145,000 by the end of the month." Amanda was crying, but her words cut through clearly. "The IRS is investigating me for $95,000 in unreported income. I need a lawyer, an expensive lawyer. I'm $280,000 in debt from a real estate deal that went bad." Rebecca's admission came hard. "Investors are suing me. I'm about to lose my license." Kenneth's voice quiet until now. "I don't want any part of this." "Shut up, Kenneth." Christopher again. $38 million split 5 ways is $7.6 million each. That solves all our problems. Robert left it specifically to Melissa and Anna. Kenneth sounded uncertain. "The article said—" "I don't care what the article said." Rebecca's control slipped. "That money should be split among family. Melissa can't manage that kind of wealth. She was living in a car 6 months ago. She's going to lose it all to scammers or waste it or—" "So we take it first," Kenneth interrupted. "Is that what we're saying? We're protecting it." Amanda's tears had stopped her voice hardening. "We're protecting Melissa and Anna from a situation they're not equipped to handle. That's what family does." Kenneth said nothing for a long moment. Then, "I need to think about this." He hung up. Rebecca pulled up a search on her phone, Estate Litigation Attorney, California. The first result was Michael Johnson, Sacramento, specializing in contested wills and family disputes. His website featured testimonials from clients who'd successfully challenged inheritance distributions. She dialed before she could second-guess herself. Johnson's consultation fee was $500. His retainer would be $75,000. He'd need another $25,000 for expert witnesses, forensic accountants, private investigators. Total initial cost $100,000 split 3 ways. Rebecca did the math. $33,000 each. She'd have to drain her savings account and max out her remaining credit card. But if they won, if they forced Melissa to split the estate, $7 million would erase her debt and leave her with enough to rebuild. Christopher agreed immediately. Amanda took longer, but eventually said yes. They had their lawyer, Nashak. William Harris assembled the defense team in his office 6 days after the news broke. Patricia Johnson arrived from Portland, her reputation for handling high-stakes estate disputes preceding her like armor. Donald Thompson drove up from Boise, a trial lawyer whose record in family court cases read like a masterclass in courtroom strategy. They spread documents across Harris's conference table, while Melissa sat at the head Anna in school trying to absorb information that came too fast, and in language she barely understood. Patricia's assessment was clinical. They're going to attack 3 points. First, your homelessness history as evidence of poor judgment and instability. Second, your lack of financial experience as proof you can't manage a complex estate. Third, Anna's living situation as grounds for custody concerns. Donald leaned forward, his voice gentler than his reputation suggested. We counter each point systematically, and we expose their real motivation, which is money. They don't want to protect you. They want to take what's yours. The evidence gathering began immediately. Dr. Richard Davis, a psychologist Patricia knew from previous cases, conducted a full evaluation of Melissa over 3 sessions. His report came back unequivocal. Subject demonstrates complete mental competency, above average intelligence, and remarkable psychological resilience. History of homelessness is circumstantial rather than pathological. No evidence of impaired judgment or decision-making capacity. Bank records went next. Every transaction from the past 3 years documented and cross-referenced. The loans became a timeline of betrayal. Rebecca's $11,000 on March 15, 2023, promised repayment in 60 days. Christopher's $13,000 on March 22, same promise. Amanda's $9,000 on April 3. Kenneth's $8,500 on April 10. Total $41,500, $0 repaid. Text messages and emails filled a binder an inch thick. Melissa's requests for repayment met with silence or excuses or outright blocking. Her calls going to voicemail, her attempts to reach out for help during the worst of the homelessness, getting no response. Sister Margaret agreed to testify, her statement typed and notarized. Melissa Thompson came to our shelter homeless, but never defeated. She maintained her daughter's school attendance, her health, her dignity. In 42 years of shelter work, I have seen hundreds of mothers in crisis. Ms. Thompson is one of the strongest, most capable women I have encountered. Linda Brown. Anna's teacher provided a letter on school letterhead. Anna Moore is an exceptional student, reading 2 grade levels above her peers. She is well-adjusted, happy, and clearly well cared for. I have taught for 25 years and can recognize neglect. This child shows none of those signs. A housing inspector came to the cabin, documented everything. His report noted the solar panels, the clean well water tested, and certified the wood stove professionally maintained the structure sound and safe. His conclusion: property meets all applicable standards for residential occupancy and is suitable for raising children. The foundation was being laid, brick by brick, argument by argument. But Melissa could feel the weight of it pressing down, the knowledge that no matter how strong their case, she'd still have to stand in a courtroom and be judged by people who'd already decided she wasn't good enough. Jason King appeared on a Tuesday afternoon driving a BMW that looked recently detailed and wearing a suit that fit just a shade too perfectly. He knocked on the cabin door with the confidence of someone who believed his own pitch. Ms. Thompson, Jason King, private art consultant. I represent a consortium of collectors very interested in your Robert Williams collection. May I have a moment of your time? Melissa opened the door only wide enough to speak through. I'm not interested in selling. Of course. But hear me out. $22 million cash. We close in 2 weeks. No appraisals, no inspections, no complications. Just clean money in your account and you're free to live your life without the burden of managing complex assets. $22 million was $16 million less than the collection's appraised value. Melissa's nursing background hadn't taught her much about art markets, but she understood percentages well enough to know she was being lowballed. The collection is appraised at $38 million. King's smile never wavered. Appraisals are theoretical. Actual market value is what someone's willing to pay today. Art markets are volatile, Ms. Thompson. What's worth $38 million this year might be worth $25 next year. I'm offering certainty, security for you and your daughter. Something in his phrasing triggered alarm bells. The way he emphasized Anna, the way his eyes kept scanning the cabin interior like he was cataloging what he saw. I said I'm not interested. Please leave. Ms. Thompson, you're making a mistake. Managing a collection this size requires expertise you don't have. You're vulnerable to leave now, or I'm calling the sheriff." King held up his hands in mock surrender, backing toward his car. "Think about it. My card." He left it on the porch railing. Melissa waited until the BMW disappeared before picking it up. The back of the card had a handwritten number and a note. "Offer valid 48 hours. After that, market conditions may change." She called Patricia Johnson, described the encounter. Patricia's response was immediate. "Don't engage with him again. I'll have someone look into this Jason King. Sounds like a scammer targeting people who've inherited valuable assets." The investigation took 3 days. King was known in art circles, but not favorably. He specialized in finding inexperienced heirs, offering quick cash buyouts well below market value, then flipping the assets to real collectors for massive profits. He'd been sued twice for fraud, but settled both cases before trial. Melissa had dodged a bullet, but the fact that people like King existed, that they were circling like predators drawn to blood in the water, made her realize how visible they'd become. The news story had painted a target on their backs, and now everyone with a scheme or an angle knew exactly where to aim. The envelope arrived by certified mail on a Monday morning, thick and official, and carrying the seal of the Bonner County Court. Melissa signed for it with hands that already knew what it contained before she opened it. Petition for guardianship of Melissa Thompson and emergency custody of Anna Moore. Petitioners: Rebecca Clark, Christopher Anderson, Amanda Mitchell. The legal language was dense, but the accusations came through clearly. Melissa's history of housing instability demonstrating ongoing pattern of poor judgment. Her lack of financial literacy and experience managing complex assets. The cabin's isolated location without adequate amenities, posing risk to minor child. Anna's need for stable urban environment with access to quality education and health care. The petition requested immediate freeze of all estate assets, temporary transfer of Anna's custody to Rebecca, pending full hearing and appointment of a professional guardian to manage the collection for Melissa's benefit and protection. The final paragraph outlined their proposed solution: forced sale of the collection with proceeds distributed equitably among family members in accordance with intestate succession principles. Melissa read it twice before her hands started shaking. They weren't just coming for the money. They were coming for Anna. Anna was at school, wouldn't be home for another 3 hours. Melissa sat on the porch with the petition in her lap and felt something crack open inside her chest. The panic attack hit like a freight train, her vision tunneling, her breath coming in gas that didn't seem to pull any oxygen. She managed to call Harris. He arrived within the hour, took one look at her, and called Patricia and Donald immediately. They convened in the cabin's main room, Melissa wrapped in a blanket, despite the wood stove's heat, trying to get her breathing under control. Donald read through the petition with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen this playbook before. "This is aggressive, but it's also overreaching. They're asking for too much, too fast, which suggests desperation rather than strength. They can't actually take Anna, can they?" Melissa's voice came out, smaller than she wanted. Patricia's answer was careful. "Not easily. You'd have to be demonstrably unfit, and nothing in your history suggests that. But they can make the process painful. depositions, hearings, evaluations. They can drag this out for months while we fight them at every turn. How long? 6 months to a year, maybe longer if they appeal. A year of fighting, a year of having her fitness as a mother questioned publicly. A year of Anna hearing strangers debate whether Melissa was capable of caring for her. But here's what nobody in that room knew, was that 3 days later, Sheriff Taylor would find the GPS tracker that proved this was never about concern. The call came on a Thursday. George White had spotted the same truck again, this time, parked during daylight hours, on a logging road with sight lines to the cabin. Taylor went to investigate, found tire tracks, but no vehicle. On instinct, he suggested checking Melissa's Subaru. The tracker was magnetically attached under the rear bumper, small and black, and professionally installed. Taylor bagged it as evidence ran the serial number. The device had been purchased on Amazon and shipped to an address in Bellingham, Washington, Christopher Anderson's address. Ms. Thompson, this is stalking, criminal surveillance under Idaho Code 18-6702. I'm filing a report and I'll be recommending charges. Melissa stared at the small black box in the evidence bag and felt rage replace fear. They hadn't just sued her. They'd been tracking her movements like she was prey they needed to hunt. Taylor's report went to Patricia and Donald within hours. The GPS tracker became Exhibit A in what was rapidly becoming not just a defense, but a counterattack. They didn't just want her money anymore. They wanted to prove these people were willing to break the law to get it. The 3 vehicles arrived in convoy formation on a gray afternoon 2 weeks after the lawsuit was filed. Rebecca's BMW in front, Christopher's truck in the middle, Amanda's sedan bringing up the rear. Behind them came a 4th car carrying Michael Johnson and a photographer whose camera was already out and shooting before they'd even parked. Melissa was splitting wood behind the cabin when she heard the engines. Anna was inside, doing homework, the wood stove keeping the main room warm against October's creeping cold. By the time Melissa walked around to the front, they were already out of their vehicles and advancing like an invading force. Rebecca wore a designer suit that probably cost what Melissa used to make in a month. Christopher's face was already flushed red, his fists clenched. Amanda had tears ready to deploy tissue in hand. Johnson stood back observing while the photographer documented everything. "Melissa, we need to talk about Anna's future." Rebecca's voice carried the same false warmth she probably used on difficult clients. "There's nothing to talk about. Robert left the property to Anna and me. You're not part of this." Christopher pushed forward, his voice already rising. "Robert was Dad's uncle. That makes it family property. You don't get to keep it all. I'm not keeping anything from family. Robert's will was clear. He wanted Anna and me to have this." "You were homeless." Rebecca's composure cracked. 6 months ago, you were sleeping in a car. Now you think you can manage $38 million. Amanda's tears started on cue. "We're worried about Anna, Melissa. This isn't about money. We love her. We want what's best for her." Anna appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. Her face went from curiosity to alarm to anger in the space of seconds. "Leave my mom alone." Christopher turned on her. "Kid, shut up. Adults are talking." Anna's voice climbed higher. "You're bad people. You're trying to take our home." Melissa moved between Christopher and her daughter instinctively, her body a shield. Don't you dare speak to her like that. James Smith emerged from the workshop where he'd been helping repair a window frame. He was a carpenter who'd been doing odd jobs around the property, someone who'd become a friend over the past weeks. Now he crossed the clearing with purpose, putting himself beside Melissa. "I think it's time for you folks to leave." Christopher rounded on him. "Who the hell are you? Someone who's calling the sheriff if you don't go. Now!" Michael Johnson stepped forward, briefcase clicking open. "Ms. Thompson, you'll be hearing from the court. We're filing for an emergency hearing based on ongoing danger to the child in this environment." He pulled out papers, thrust them at Melissa. "I recommend you settle. 60-40 split, you keep custody with family visitation rights, and we all walk away without destroying each other in court." "No." "Then we'll see you in court, and we will take your daughter." The words hung in the air like a physical threat. The photographer had been shooting the entire time, capturing Melissa's anger, Anna's tears, the rustic cabin that could be framed as inadequate or charming, depending on which narrative you wanted to sell. Rebecca turned away, calling over her shoulder, "Last chance, Melissa. Settle or lose everything." The vehicles pulled away, leaving deep ruts in the dirt road. Melissa stood shaking James's hand on her shoulder. Anna pressed against her side. The confrontation had lasted maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like being flayed open, every vulnerability exposed and documented for later use. Anna looked up, her voice small. "They can't really take me, can they?" Melissa wanted to say no, wanted to promise absolute safety, but she'd learned the hard way that promises meant nothing without the power to keep them. "We're going to fight, baby. We have good lawyers. We have evidence they're lying. We're going to fight, and we're going to win." But the fear had been planted, roots going deep. For the first time since finding the vault, Melissa wondered if Robert's gift was worth the price they were about to pay. Sharon Lewis had shown up at the cabin in early September, 2 months before the lawsuit, driving a car that sputtered and died in the driveway. She had an 8-year-old son named Tyler, eviction papers dated for the end of the week, and desperation written across every line of her face. Sister Margaret had given her Melissa's number, told her that Melissa understood what it meant to have nowhere to go, that maybe she could help. Melissa had let them stay in the cabin's spare room for 3 weeks while Sharon looked for work and saved for a deposit on an apartment. She'd given Sharon $2,000, refusing to call it a loan, insisting it was a gift. She'd watched Tyler and Anna become friends, had felt something settle in her chest at the sound of children playing in the forest, normal and happy and safe. Sharon had left with tears of gratitude, promising to pay it forward to help someone else the way Melissa had helped her. That was before Michael Johnson found her. The offer came through a phone call, $5,000 to testify about Melissa's erratic behavior, her instability, her questionable judgment in the isolated cabin. All Sharon had to do was describe what she'd observed during those 3 weeks. Sharon had stared at her bank account balance, -$43. At the eviction notice that had arrived at her new apartment, because the job she'd found didn't pay enough. At Tyler, asking why they couldn't afford the school field trip. $5,000 would solve immediate problems. $5,000 would buy breathing room. She told herself Melissa would understand, that Melissa had resources, now could fight this, that Sharon had to think about her own child first. She called Johnson back and said yes. The deposition happened in a law office in Coeur d'Alene, Sharon's testimony recorded and transcribed. She described Melissa talking to herself at night. Said Melissa sometimes forgot to make dinner, that Anna had gone to bed hungry. Claimed the cabin felt unsafe, too isolated, that she'd been concerned for Anna's welfare, but hadn't wanted to say anything at the time. Every word was a lie, but the $5,000 appeared in her account the next business day. Donald Thompson discovered the truth by accident running background checks on everyone who might testify. He found Sharon's eviction notice dated 3 weeks after she'd stayed with Melissa, found the bank deposit that matched Johnson's payment, exactly found text messages between Sharon and a paralegal in Johnson's office coordinating the testimony. The text that sealed it was simple. If you testify like we discussed, the $5,000 will be deposited tomorrow. Witness tampering, perjury, federal crimes that made the GPS tracker look like amateur hour. Patricia's voice on the phone was ice. We don't reveal this yet. We let them use her testimony in the pre-trial. We let them commit to it. Then we destroy them with it at the main trial. But the betrayal cut deeper than strategy. Sharon had sat at Melissa's table, had eaten food Melissa cooked, had accepted help freely. Given, and then she'd sold that kindness for $5,000. Anna took it hardest when she found out. Tyler had been her friend, the first real friend she'd made since moving to Idaho. Learning that his mother had lied about them felt like a crack running through everything good they'd built. Why would she do that, Mom? We helped her. Melissa had no good answer. Sometimes people chose survival over gratitude. Sometimes desperation made liars of everyone. Sometimes the world punished kindness and rewarded betrayal, and all you could do was keep being kind anyway and hope it mattered in the end. The pre-trial hearing happened on a Thursday morning in November, 8 weeks after the lawsuit was filed. Judge Carolyn Winters presided, her reputation for impatience with frivolous litigation preceding her like a warning shot. The courtroom smelled of old wood and winter heating systems. Melissa sat at the defendant's table between Patricia and Donald, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Anna was in the front row with James and Barbara Miller, her face serious and scared. Across the aisle, Rebecca, Christopher, and Amanda sat with Michael Johnson, all of them projecting confidence that made Melissa's stomach twist. Johnson's presentation was polished, every word calculated for maximum impact. He showed photographs of the Subaru with blankets visible in the back seat, images Marcus had hired a private investigator to capture during Melissa's homeless period. He displayed bank records showing 3 evictions in 18 months, employment gaps, the systematic pattern of what he called ongoing instability. He called Christopher to testify, and Melissa's brother transformed into a concerned family member overnight. Your Honor, I love my sister, but I've watched her struggle for years. The homelessness, the job losses, the inability to maintain stability. When I heard she'd inherited $38 million, I was happy for her. Then I was terrified. Melissa has no experience managing money. She's vulnerable to every scammer and con artist who comes calling. We're not trying to take anything from her. We're trying to protect her from a situation that will destroy her. Rebecca followed her real estate training, evident in every gesture. I've worked in property management for 18 years, Your Honor. I understand assets and finance. Melissa refused our help. She's being stubborn and prideful when what she needs is professional guidance. This isn't about greed, it's about preventing catastrophe. Amanda's testimony hit softer notes, tears deployed at strategic moments. I love my niece. Watching Anna grow up homeless broke my heart. Now she's living in a cabin miles from town, from proper schools, from emergency services. If Anna gets hurt out there, help is an hour away. We're not trying to separate them. We're trying to ensure Anna has the life she deserves. Sharon Lewis took the stand, and Melissa watched her former friend commit perjury with practiced ease. The erratic behavior, the forgotten meals, the isolation concerns, all delivered with just the right amount of reluctance, like someone who didn't want to speak ill but felt compelled by conscience. Johnson's closing argument pulled it all together. Your Honor, love isn't enough. Melissa Thompson loves her daughter deeply. No one questions that. But good intentions don't equal capability. $38 million in the hands of someone with no training, no support system, no history of financial stability, it's a recipe for disaster. A child in isolation without proper socialization. It's developmental harm waiting to happen. We ask this court to protect both Melissa and Anna from a situation neither is equipped to handle. Judge Winters looked at Melissa with an expression that might have been sympathy or might have been judgment. Ms. Thompson, you're represented by counsel. Donald stood. Yes, Your Honor. I'll hear your defense, but I must say the preliminary evidence is concerning. Donald presented their case methodically. Dr. Davis's psychological evaluation, Sister Margaret's testimony about Melissa's strength during homelessness, Linda Brown's letter about Anna's academic success and emotional well-being, the housing inspector's report confirming the cabin met all safety standards. He entered the bank records showing the $41,500 in unpaid loans, the text messages demonstrating systematic abandonment, Sheriff Taylor's report about the GPS tracker. But Johnson countered each point with practiced ease. The loans were family helping family, not legal obligations. The GPS tracker was inappropriate but motivated by genuine concern. The psychological evaluation was theoretical rather than practical. Melissa testified briefly, her voice steadier than she felt. I kept Anna safe for 18 months with nothing. Now I have resources, professional help, a home. I'm not trying to do this alone. Johnson's cross-examination was surgical. You lived in a car. You were evicted 3 times. You couldn't maintain employment. What makes you think you can manage $38 million? I have experts helping me, lawyers, financial advisors, hired after you inherited the money. Before that, you couldn't manage your own rent. Melissa had no response that didn't sound defensive. Anna asked to speak, and Judge Winters allowed it despite the irregularity. The girl stood at the witness box, barely tall enough to see over it, and spoke with a clarity that made Melissa's heart break. My mom is the best mom. She never stopped trying. We're happy now. Please don't take me away. Johnson's objection was immediate. Your Honor, the child is clearly coached. Anna's response came fast and fierce. I'm not coached. I love my mom, and I want to stay with her. The courtroom went silent. Judge Winters studied Anna for a long moment, then looked at the assembled evidence, then at Melissa. I'm going to recess until tomorrow at 2 p.m. to review all materials and render a decision on whether this case proceeds to full trial. The gavel fell. Melissa left the courtroom with Anna's hand in hers, Patricia and Donald flanking them, and allowed herself to believe that maybe the judge had seen through the performance to the truth underneath. That belief lasted until the following afternoon when Judge Winters delivered her ruling. I've reviewed all evidence submitted. I am not convinced Ms. Thompson is incompetent. However, I do have serious concerns about Anna's living situation and Ms. Thompson's preparedness for managing a complex estate. The temporary orders came down like hammer blows. Anna remains with Ms. Thompson. Custody is not transferred at this time. However, Child Protective Services will conduct monthly home visits for the next 6 months. Estate assets remain frozen. Ms. Thompson cannot sell, transfer, or substantially alter the collection pending trial. Full trial is scheduled for 8 weeks from today. At that time, I will determine whether guardianship is necessary, whether custody should be modified, and how the estate should be managed. It wasn't a loss, but it wasn't a win either. Rebecca smirked as they left. "See you in 8 weeks, sis." Melissa held Anna and tried not to let her daughter see how terrified she was, that in 8 weeks she might lose everything that mattered. Susan Walker arrived for the first Child Protective Services visit on a Monday morning 3 weeks after the pre-trial hearing. She carried a clipboard and wore an expression of professional neutrality that somehow felt worse than open hostility. Anna was at school, which meant Melissa faced the inspection alone, every surface of the cabin suddenly feeling inadequate under governmental scrutiny. Walker documented everything: the solar panels and their charge capacity, the well water and its filtration system, the wood stove's maintenance records, the bedrooms and their heating sources. She asked about emergency protocols, medical access, educational resources, social interaction opportunities. Ms. Thompson, if Anna were to fall and break her arm at 3 in the morning, how long would it take you to reach emergency care? Melissa calculated. The drive to Sandpoint Regional, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on weather. Walker made a note, her pen scratching across the form in a way that sounded like judgment. The questions continued for 90 minutes. Walker interviewed Anna separately when she got home from school, taking her into the bedroom and closing the door. Melissa sat in the main room, trying not to imagine what her daughter was being asked, what doubts were being planted. When Anna emerged, her face was set in that careful blankness she'd perfected during the homeless months, the expression that meant she was protecting something fragile inside. Walker's report arrived by email 3 days later. Child appears physically healthy and emotionally stable. Home environment meets basic safety standards. However, isolation remains a concern. Recommend continued monthly monitoring. It wasn't damning, but it wasn't exonerating either. Just another weight added to scales that already felt impossibly unbalanced. The second visit came 4 weeks later, then a third. Each time Walker arrived with her clipboard, each time Anna's face went blank, each time the report came back with the same careful neutrality that meant everything and nothing. By the fourth visit, Melissa stopped sleeping through the night. She'd wake at 2 or 3 in the morning, her mind racing through scenarios where the judge decided Anna was better off somewhere else, where temporary custody turned permanent, where all of Robert's careful planning couldn't protect them from people who believed good intentions mattered more than character. The breakdown came 3 weeks before the trial date, on a night when the temperature dropped below freezing, and Melissa's nightmares had been particularly vivid. She woke gasping Anna's name on her lips, stumbled out to the porch at 2 in the morning just to prove to herself that her daughter was still there, still safe, still hers. James found her an hour later, sitting on the porch steps in inadequate clothing, shaking from cold and exhaustion and fear that had nowhere else to go. He'd been staying in one of the completed tiny homes on the property, hired initially to do carpentry work, but gradually becoming something more friend support, someone who understood without needing explanations. Now he wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her in silence until she could form words. What if they're right? What if I'm being selfish, keeping her here when she could have private schools and tutors and a life I can't give her even with Robert's money? James didn't rush to reassure her, which somehow made his response carry more weight when it came. Anna has what money can't buy, a mother who'd die for her, a home she helped discover, a life she chose. That cabin full of paintings is worthless compared to that. But what if I lose in court? Then we fight appeals. Then we fight custody modification. Then we fight forever. You don't give up on your kid because someone with a law degree says you should. Melissa turned to look at him. This man who'd appeared in her life at exactly the moment she needed someone who understood what it meant to rebuild from wreckage. How did you know about not giving up? Iraq. 2007, IED took my leg and my squad leader and any illusions I had about the world being fair. Spent 2 years thinking I was done, that losing that much meant I had nothing left to build with. Then I realized the only way they win is if you stop trying, so I stopped giving them that power. He pulled up his pant leg, revealing the prosthetic Melissa had somehow never noticed despite working alongside him for months. You fight because giving up isn't actually easier. It just feels like it is when you're this tired. Anna appeared in the doorway, wrapped in the quilt from her bed. Mom, are you okay? Melissa opened her arms, and her daughter crossed the porch to nestle between them, small and warm and absolutely certain that wherever her mother was qualified as home. I'm okay, baby. Just needed some air. We're going to win right in court, James answered before Melissa could. We're going to fight like hell to win. And if we don't win the first time, we'll fight again. That's what families do. Anna looked up at him with something like hope. Are you family? If you'll have me, yeah, I think maybe I am. They sat together until the sun started to rise, turning the mountains from black to purple to gold, and Melissa felt something in her chest that had been clenched tight for months finally start to loosen. She wasn't alone in this. Anna wasn't alone. Whatever happened in that courtroom, they had people who would stand with them. No. Kenneth's call came 2 weeks before the trial, his voice tight with something that might have been guilt or fear or both. Melissa, I need to talk to you, in person. It's important. They met at a diner in Pinehurst Neutral Ground, where neither of them had history. Kenneth looked terrible weight loss, carved into his face, dark circles under his eyes that suggested weeks of bad sleep. He ordered coffee and didn't touch it, his hands wrapped around the cup for warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. I withdrew from the lawsuit yesterday. Told Michael Johnson I'm out. I can't do this anymore. Melissa waited, knowing there was more coming, that people didn't drive 8 hours to deliver information they could have texted. Kenneth's confession spilled out like poison he'd been holding too long. This was never about protecting you or Anna. It was always about money. Rebecca owes $280,000 to investors from a real estate deal that went bad. She's facing lawsuits about to lose her license. Christopher owes loan sharks $145,000 from gambling debts. They've threatened to break his legs if he doesn't pay. Amanda's being investigated by the IRS for $95,000 in unreported income tax fraud. She needs an expensive lawyer. He looked up, meeting Melissa's eyes for the first time. The plan was to win the lawsuit, force sale of the collection, split the proceeds. After legal fees, each of us would get around $9 million, enough to solve all our problems and have plenty left over. And you? Melissa heard her voice come out flat, all the emotion compressed into something dense and hard. $32,000 in credit card debt. Thought this was my way out. Kenneth pulled out his checkbook with hands that shook. Here's $2,000. It's all I have right now. But I'll pay back every penny of the $8,500 I borrowed. $500 a month until it's done. I have it in writing. The check sat on the table between them, the first payment of accountability from any of her siblings in 3 years. Why now? Why not before you put Anna through this? Because I listened to Michael prep Rebecca on how to cry on command for the judge. Because I watched Christopher plant that GPS tracker and laugh about it. Because I saw Anna's face when we showed up at the cabin, and I realized we're the villains in this story. We're the ones hurting a little girl to pay our own debts. Kenneth's voice broke. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know you probably can't forgive me, but I needed you to know the truth about what they're doing. And I needed to start paying back what I stole, because you're right, it was stealing. We knew we'd never pay you back when we asked for those loans. Melissa took the check, folded it carefully. Thank you for telling me. It'll help in court. Melissa, one more thing. They're desperate, truly desperate. Rebecca maxed out her last credit card to pay to Johnson's retainer. Christopher's loan sharks have given him a deadline. They'll do anything to win this. Watch out for them. He left cash for his untouched coffee and walked out. Melissa sat alone in the booth studying the check, thinking about how fear made people capable of almost anything, and how rare it was for someone to step back from the edge once they'd committed to the jump. Kenneth wasn't redeemed. One check and a confession didn't erase 3 years of betrayal, but it was something. A crack in the united front that had seemed unbreakable. Patricia's voice on the phone an hour later was ice wrapped in strategy. This is huge. Kenneth's testimony about their financial desperation establishes clear motive. Combined with Sharon's perjury and the GPS tracker, we're building a case that this is criminal conspiracy, not family concern. The trial began on a Thursday morning in late November, snow threatening in clouds that hung low over the mountains. The Bonner County Courthouse filled early media, occupying the back rows, Pinehurst residents claiming seats in a show of solidarity that made Melissa's throat tight. She wore the professional outfit Patricia had bought for her, her hair pulled back, makeup applied with Barbara Miller's help, because Melissa had forgotten how to do anything more complicated than basic hygiene during the survival years. Anna sat in the front row between James and Barbara, her face set with determination that looked too old for an 11-year-old child. Across the aisle, Rebecca, Christopher, and Amanda sat with Michael Johnson. Kenneth's absence was conspicuous, a missing piece that everyone noticed but no one mentioned. Judge Winters called the court to order, and Johnson began his case with the Polish of someone who'd done this before and won. His expert witnesses came first. Dr. Helen Carter, a child psychologist with impressive credentials, testified about isolation's impact on development. Children require peer interaction for healthy socialization. Extended periods in remote environments can result in developmental delays, difficulty forming relationships, anxiety disorders. Donald's cross-examination was surgical. Dr. Carter, Anna Moore has friends at school, correct? According to reports, yes. She's thriving academically, reading above grade level. The educational assessments suggest she's doing well, yes. So the isolation you're concerned about, she's not actually experiencing it. The risk remains regardless of current outcomes. A financial advisor named Mark Stevens followed, explaining how easily inexperienced people lost inherited wealth. Statistics show that 40 to 60% of individuals who receive substantial inheritances lose it within 5 years through poor investment choices, scams, and excessive spending. Donald produced documents showing Melissa's hired team. Ms. Thompson has retained Patricia Johnson, one of the Northwest's top estate attorneys. She's working with William Harris, who managed Robert Williams's affairs for 20 years. She's consulting with certified financial planners. She's not managing this alone, is she? Stevens admitted he hadn't reviewed Melissa's actual advisor roster before testifying. Sharon Lewis took the stand, and Melissa watched her former friend commit perjury with the same practiced delivery she'd used in the pretrial. The erratic behavior, the forgotten meals, the concerns about Anna's safety in the isolated cabin. Each lie layered onto the last building a narrative that bore no resemblance to the 3 weeks Sharon had actually spent in Melissa's home. Donald let her finish, made notes, asked no questions. Patricia had been clear, let them commit to Sharon's testimony, let them make it central to their case. Then destroy it in front of the judge with evidence they don't know exists. Rebecca testified with the confidence of someone who'd sold houses worth millions and believed that made her qualified to judge others, Your Honor. I've worked in property and financial management for 18 years. I understand complex transactions, asset preservation, market conditions. Melissa has no experience in any of these areas. She refused our help because she's being stubborn and prideful when what she needs is professional family guidance. Christopher followed his performance and the concerned brother more polished than Melissa had expected. I love my sister. Your Honor, but love doesn't make someone capable. Melissa couldn't hold a job, couldn't pay rent, couldn't maintain basic stability. Now she has $38 million and thinks she can manage it. She'll lose it all to the first con artist who comes calling with a sympathetic story. Amanda deployed tears at precisely calculated moments. I just want Anna to be safe. That cabin is so far from help, from proper medical care. If something happens, my niece could die before they reach a hospital. We're not trying to take her away from Melissa. We're trying to ensure she has the safety net every child deserves. Michael Johnson's closing argument pulled the threads together with practiced ease, Your Honor. The petitioners are not perfect people. They have their own financial struggles, their own mistakes, but those struggles don't invalidate their very real concerns about a situation that puts both Melissa and Anna at risk. We're asking this court to appoint professional oversight to ensure this inheritance benefits everyone it should benefit, and to guarantee Anna's safety in an environment that currently poses unacceptable risks. The first day ended with the petitioner's case feeling airtight, their performance compelling their concern, seemingly genuine to anyone who didn't know what lay beneath. Donald began the defense on day 2 with methodical precision, building a counter-narrative brick by brick. Dr. Richard Davis's psychological evaluation went into the record first, his assessment unequivocal. Melissa Thompson demonstrates complete mental competency, above-average intelligence, and extraordinary psychological resilience. Her history of homelessness is circumstantial rather than pathological. She maintained her daughter's well-being under circumstances that would have broken many people. That's not evidence of poor judgment. It's evidence of exceptional character under duress. Sister Margaret took the stand in her full habit, 70 years of working with women in crisis lending weight to every word. I've run shelters for 42 years. Your Honor, I've seen hundreds of mothers at their worst moments. Melissa Thompson came to us homeless, but never defeated. She kept Anna in schools, kept her fed, kept her safe. She never asked for handouts, just an address so she could apply for jobs. When she got the letter about the inheritance, she could have left without a word. Instead, she thanked us and promised to help others the way she wished she'd been helped. That's not instability, that's integrity. Linda Brown brought Anna's academic records and her teacher's observations. Anna is reading at 8th grade level, Your Honor. She excels in mathematics, writes with creativity and depth unusual for her age. She has friends, participates in school activities, shows no signs of the developmental concerns Dr. Carter suggested. I've taught for 25 years. I can recognize neglect. This child shows none of those indicators. Barbara Miller spoke about Robert's deliberate choice. Robert Williams told me directly, Your Honor, that he'd observed the Thompson family for decades. He said Melissa was the only one who gave, without keeping score, the only one who understood that character mattered more than blood. He knew his family would contest the will. He prepared for exactly this lawsuit. His choice was informed and intentional. Sheriff Stephen Taylor entered the GPS tracker into evidence, his testimony matter of fact. This device was illegally attached to Miss Thompson's vehicle by Christopher Anderson. That's not concern, Your Honor. That's stalking. It's criminal behavior that resulted in formal charges. Donald produced the bank records showing the $41,500 in unpaid loans, the text messages where Melissa begged for repayment and received silence, or blocking the social media posts showing Rebecca's vacation while Melissa slept in a car. Melissa's testimony came last, her voice steadier than it had been at the pretrial. Your Honor, I don't claim to be perfect. I made mistakes, trusted people. I shouldn't have ended up in a terrible situation. But I never stopped fighting for my daughter. When Robert gave us this cabin, this collection, he gave us more than money. He gave us proof that someone saw value in us when the rest of the world looked away. I'm not trying to manage $38 million alone. I've hired experts, professionals who know what I don't. But the decision-making is mine because Robert trusted me with it. I'm asking this court to honor that trust. Johnson's cross-examination tried to find cracks. You couldn't manage your own rent, but you expect us to believe you can manage $38 million? I couldn't manage rent after my family took $41,500 and left me with nothing. That's not poor judgment. That's being betrayed by people who were supposed to help. You lived in a car with a child. That's endangerment. That's survival. I had no other options after eviction. I kept Anna safe, educated, loved. Now I have options, resources, support. I'm using them. Anna asked to testify again, and Judge Winters allowed it. The girl stood at the witness box with the same fierce determination she'd shown at the pretrial. My mom is the best person I know. When we lived in the car, she always made sure I ate first, even when that meant she didn't eat. She walked me to school every day and helped me with homework at the library. She never made me feel like being poor was my fault. She kept me safe. Now we have a home, and I have my own room, and we're happy. Please don't let them take me away. Johnson's objection was immediate. Your Honor, this child— Anna cut him off, her voice rising. I'm not a child who can't think I know what I want. I want to stay with my mom. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Then Donald played his final card. Your Honor, we have one additional piece of evidence. Robert Williams recorded this 8 months before his death, anticipating exactly this situation. The television wheeled in the ancient VCR, loaded the tape, beginning to play. Robert Williams appeared on screen, sitting at the desk in the vault, surrounded by his life's work. 89 years old, but sharp-eyed, his voice clear and certain. My name is Robert Williams. Today is March 3rd, 2024. I'm recording this with my attorney, William Harris, as witness. I am of sound mind. My doctor will attest to this in writing. He paused, looking directly into the camera, like he could see through time to this exact courtroom. I'm making this recording because I know what will happen when I die. I've observed the Thompson family for 45 years. I know who they are. The specificity of what followed made Rebecca's face go white. Rebecca Clark uses her real estate license to manipulate elderly clients into bad investments for commission. I've watched her do it at family gatherings, bragging about soft targets. Christopher Anderson gambles compulsively and blames everyone else when he loses. I watched him steal from his ex-wife and call it reclaiming what was mine. Amanda Mitchell committed fraud at her workplace and played victim when caught. I saw the court documents she tried to hide. Robert's voice didn't rise, didn't show anger, just stated facts with the precision of an engineer cataloging data. But I watched Melissa. When her father was dying, she quit her job to care for him for 8 months, used her savings for his medication, never asked her siblings for help, just gave everything she had. When they needed money, she gave it freely. When they didn't repay, she didn't sue. She just absorbed the loss and kept going. When her husband turned violent, she left with nothing to protect Anna. That's courage. When homelessness came, she could have surrendered Anna to foster care for Anna's own good. She didn't. She fought every single day to keep her daughter safe and loved and educated. That's not poor judgment. That's extraordinary character under impossible circumstances. The camera stayed steady on Robert's face. This collection represents 60 years of work. I started in 1963 with a $50 painting, built it slowly, carefully, every piece chosen with thought and patience. I'm giving it to Melissa because she deserves it, not because of blood, because of character. His next words landed like artillery. To any court reviewing this, if Rebecca, Christopher, or Amanda contest this will know that I predicted it. They are not victims. They are predators. I watched them for decades. I know exactly what they'll claim, that Melissa is incompetent, that they're concerned that family should share. It's all performance. They want money they didn't earn to solve problems they created. Robert leaned forward slightly, his intensity filling the screen. Melissa, stand firm. The wolves will come with tears and lawyers and claims of concern. Don't believe them. They're the reason you were homeless. They took your money and abandoned you. Use this collection wisely. Build something that lasts. Help others the way you wish you'd been helped. Anna, be like your mother. Give without keeping score, but don't let takers convince you that's weakness. It's strength. Blood doesn't make family. Character does. The screen went dark. The courtroom sat in stunned silence for a full 10 seconds before Judge Winters spoke. Mr. Johnson, do you have anything to add? Johnson stood, his confidence visibly shaken. Your Honor, Robert Williams was elderly. He may have been influenced. That man sounded more lucid than half the witnesses I've heard this week. Sit down. Johnson sat. The closing arguments felt anticlimactic after Robert's testimony. Johnson tried to recover, emphasizing that even with Robert's wishes, the court had to consider Anna's best interests. Donald simply pointed at the evidence: comprehensive psychological evaluations, educational assessments, character witnesses, and a video from beyond the grave that predicted every move the petitioners had made. Judge Winters recessed until the following morning at 10 a.m. to render her verdict. Melissa left the courthouse with Anna's hand in hers, James and Barbara flanking them, and allowed herself to believe that maybe Robert's voice from the past would be enough to protect them in the present. The courtroom filled earlier the next morning, anticipation thick enough to taste. Melissa had slept perhaps 2 hours, her mind cycling through scenarios ranging from complete victory to devastating loss. Anna sat pressed against her side, small and warm, and trying so hard to be brave. Judge Winters entered precisely at 10, her face revealing nothing. The courtroom rose, then sat, then held its collective breath. The judge looked first at Rebecca Christopher and Amanda, and something in her expression made Rebecca's spine straighten with alarm. I've presided over family law for 26 years. I've seen greed dressed as concern more times than I can count, but rarely have I seen a case this transparent in its cynicism. She picked up the GPS tracker evidence. This is not concern. This is stalking, criminal behavior that resulted in charges Mr. Anderson is currently facing. This is not the action of someone worried about a family member's well-being. The financial records came next. Ms. Clark owes $280,000 and is facing lawsuits that threaten her license. Mr. Anderson owes loan sharks $145,000 and faces physical threats. Ms. Mitchell is under IRS investigation for $95,000 in tax fraud. The pattern is clear: desperate people seeking a financial solution through legal manipulation. Sharon Lewis's perjury. The court has received evidence that Ms. Lewis was paid $5,000 to testify falsely about Ms. Thompson's behavior. Text messages between Ms. Lewis and Mayor Johnson's office prove witness tampering. This reflects directly on the integrity of the petitioner's case. Judge Winters turned to the evidence of Anna's well-being. Every professional who evaluated this child, teachers, doctors, child protective services, reports She is thriving. She excels academically. She has friends. She shows no signs of neglect or developmental harm. The isolation concerns raised by the petitioners are theoretical rather than evidenced. The psychological evaluation of Melissa. Dr. Davis's assessment is unequivocal. Ms. Thompson is fully competent, intelligent, and resilient. Homelessness resulted from familial betrayal, not personal failing. She maintained her daughter's welfare under circumstances that would have broken many people. Finally, Robert's video, Mr. Williams was lucid, specific, and prophetic. He knew his family. He predicted this lawsuit with remarkable accuracy. His choice was informed and intentional. This court will honor it. Judge Winter's voice hardened. The petitioners claim they want to protect Ms. Thompson and Anna. The evidence shows they want to access money they believe they're entitled to. They've committed crimes to pursue this case. They've lied under oath. They've manipulated legal processes designed to protect vulnerable people. It's unconscionable. The gavel came up, and Melissa felt her heart stop beating. Petition for guardianship denied in full. Petition for custody denied in full. Asset freeze lifted immediately. Ms. Thompson has full and unrestricted control of the Robert Williams estate. The gavel came down once. Furthermore, petitioners are ordered to pay Ms. Thompson's legal fees in the amount of $143,000. A permanent restraining order is issued. Petitioners must maintain 500 feet distance from Ms. Thompson, Anna Moore, and the property at all times. Any violation will result in immediate contempt charges and possible incarceration. The gavel came down again. Any future frivolous lawsuits against Ms. Thompson by any petitioner will result in sanctions and attorney's fees automatically awarded to the defense. This court will not tolerate further abuse of the legal system for financial gain. The gavel came down a final time. To Ms. Thompson, you've demonstrated extraordinary character under circumstances designed to break you. Honor Robert Williams's faith in you. Use this inheritance wisely. To the petitioners, you should be ashamed. You stole from your sister, abandoned her in crisis, then tried to steal again under the guise of concern. This court sees through you. Case dismissed with prejudice. The sound in the courtroom was like a dam breaking. Pinehurst residents erupted in applause that the bailiff didn't even try to silence. Melissa collapsed forward onto the table, Anna wrapping arms around her, both of them crying with relief so profound it felt like physical pain releasing. Rebecca stood frozen, her face the color of old paper. Christopher punched the table hard enough to split his knuckle. Amanda sobbed into her hands, though whether from genuine emotion or performance, Melissa no longer cared. Michael Johnson gathered his materials and left without a word, his expensive suit carrying him toward a lost case that would stain his record. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Melissa gave them one statement, her voice still shaking. I'm grateful for justice. I'm going to honor Robert Williams's trust in me. Rebecca pushed through the crowd toward reporters. We'll appeal. Johnson grabbed her arm, pulling her back. No, we won't. We'd lose, and you'd pay more fees you don't have. They left in separate vehicles, no longer even maintaining the pretense of family unity. Melissa stood on the courthouse steps with Anna and James and Barbara, watching snow begin to fall. and felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years, safe. Not just temporarily safe, not just surviving another day safe, but genuinely, deeply, permanently safe. Sometimes, rarely, impossibly, the universe gave you exactly what you needed when you needed it most. And sometimes it came packaged in brass keys and hidden vaults and recorded videos from dead men who understood that character mattered more than blood. Duh. For months after the verdict, Melissa was organizing the vault for the foundation work when she found the second hidden compartment in Robert's desk. The mechanism was subtle, a wooden panel that looked decorative but gave slightly when pressure was applied to the right corner. Inside, letters bundled with ribbon photographs yellowed with age, a small wooden box containing a lock of baby-fine hair. The top photograph showed Robert, perhaps 40 years old, with a little girl of maybe 3 sitting on his shoulders. Both were laughing at whoever held the camera. The girl had Robert's eyes, his serious expression, when not smiling. The letters were addressed in a child's evolving handwriting, starting with crayon printing and progressing through years to elegant cursive. Dear Dad, Dear Daddy, Dear Father, spanning from the early 1960s through the mid-1970s. Melissa read them in chronological order, and a story emerged that Robert had apparently never shared with his family. Elizabeth Williams, adopted 1952 when Robert was 37 years old, when most single men didn't adopt at all, and definitely not little girls from state orphanages. But Robert had seen a 3-year-old who needed a home and decided that character mattered more than convention. The letters documented a childhood filled with love. Dear Dad, today we went to the park and you pushed me so high on the swings I felt like I could fly. Dear Father, thank you for the books about birds. I read them all, and now I can identify 17 different species in our yard. Elizabeth had become a nurse, the photographs showing her in various stages of training, and then in hospital scrubs, her face carrying Robert's same quiet intensity. The final letters were dated 1975. Elizabeth's handwriting shaky. Dear Dad, the doctors say the leukemia is too advanced. They want to try experimental treatments, but you and I both know what that means. I'm not afraid. You gave me 24 years I wouldn't have had. You taught me that family is chosen, not given, that character defines us more than blood ever could. Her last letter, written a week before her death, according to the date stamp, I have one request. Don't let this collection die with you. Don't let the grief make you close off what you've built. Someday you'll meet someone who reminds you why you started someone kind, someone who gives without taking, someone who understands what truly matters. When you do pass this on to them, let my legacy be that someone else gets the chance I got to be loved and believed in when the world said they weren't worth it. Thank you for being my father. I love you, Elizabeth. The photographs showed Robert and Elizabeth together through the years, ending with one from what must have been her final week, both of them in a hospital room, his hand holding hers, her smile brave despite the obvious ravaging of disease. The wooden box held not just the lock of baby hair, but a death certificate. Elizabeth Williams died March 14, 1976, age 24, leukemia. Robert's final journal entry about Elizabeth dated just days before his own death. I saw Elizabeth in Melissa at Richard's funeral. Same kindness, same selflessness, Same willingness to sacrifice for others. This inheritance isn't just money, it's Elizabeth's legacy continued. She asked me to pass it to someone worthy. I found that person. Melissa, if you're reading this, you remind me of the daughter I lost. Use this the way Elizabeth would have to help others. She would have loved you. Melissa sat on the vault floor, surrounded by letters from a woman she'd never met, feeling connected across decades to someone who'd asked her father to keep love alive after death. She showed Anna the letters that evening, reading Elizabeth's words aloud by lamplight. Anna studied the photographs tracing Elizabeth's face with careful fingers. So we're carrying on her love. Everything we do with the foundation is because she asked Great-Uncle Robert to help someone else. Yes, baby, that's exactly what we're doing. The foundation took on new meaning after that, not just honoring Robert, but continuing Elizabeth's legacy of chosen family and love that transcended biology. Melissa renamed it formally the Robert and Elizabeth Williams Foundation. Elizabeth's nursing background inspired the healthcare component they'd been considering. Her letters about chosen family shaped the program design. Luna. The foundation's physical structure began rising on the property 14 months after the verdict. James designed the building himself, a timber frame structure that honored the forest while providing space for the work that would happen inside. 4,500 square feet of offices, counseling rooms, legal aid space, medical clinic, child care center, and a library that Barbara Miller organized with the same care she gave to Pinehurst's public collection. The 10 tiny homes James had built dotted the property's edges, each one equipped with basics: bed, kitchenette, bathroom, heat. Places where women and children could stay while rebuilding where safety came before luxury. But dignity was never sacrificed. Sister Margaret relocated from Seattle to become program director, her 42 years of shelter experience channeled into creating something that addressed not just immediate crisis, but long-term sustainability. The first families arrived before the community center was even finished. Michelle Turner came with her 7-year-old daughter Emma, fleeing domestic violence with nothing but the clothes they wore and bruises that documented years of abuse. The foundation gave them housing therapy legal aid for the restraining order. 6 months later, Michelle completed a nursing assistant program the foundation paid for. A year later, she worked at Sandpoint Regional Medical Center and had her own apartment. Jessica Phillips was 23 with 3-year-old twins, kicked out by parents who'd never accepted her teenage pregnancy. The foundation provided housing, helped her earn her GED, offered childcare while she attended community college. She enrolled in the nursing program, inspired by Elizabeth's story, determined to help others the way she'd been helped. Brian Adams, a 45-year-old widower with a 10-year-old son named Lucas, had lost his wife to cancer and his job to grief that made functioning impossible. The foundation's program wasn't designed for men, but Melissa approved the exception after one conversation. Brian completed electrician training, found employment stabilized. He began volunteering for the foundation's maintenance, teaching electrical skills to other program participants. By the end of the first year, 23 families had cycled through 47 individuals total. Not thousands like some nonprofits claimed, just 47 people who had names and stories and futures that looked different because someone had decided they mattered. Anna, now 12 years old, volunteered every weekend. She helped in the child care center, read to younger kids, listened to their mother's stories, with a seriousness that made her seem older than her years. She wrote an essay for school about what home meant, entering it in a regional competition without telling Melissa. The essay won first place and a $1,000 scholarship. Anna donated the entire amount to the foundation. This is for the next family who needs what we needed. 3 years after the verdict, the Robert and Elizabeth Williams Memorial Center held its official dedication ceremony. 400 people attended, filling the new building and spilling onto the grounds where late spring sunshine made the mountains look like something from a postcard. Judge Carolyn Winters spoke first, her stern courtroom demeanor softened by context. 3 years ago, I presided over one of the most cynical lawsuits I've ever seen. 3 people tried to steal from their sister using the legal system as a weapon. They failed because the law recognized truth over greed. But what Melissa did next is what restores my faith in humanity. She could have lived in luxury. Instead, she chose to give. 67 families helped in 3 years. That's 67 children who now have what Anna had a mother fighting for them. That's justice continuing beyond the courtroom. Sheriff Taylor spoke about community responsibility and how Pinehurst had closed ranks around Melissa when outsiders tried to tear her down. Sister Margaret's testimony carried the weight of decades. I met Melissa 4 years ago when she came to our shelter homeless and desperate. She didn't just survive, she transformed her pain into purpose. 67 families in 3 years. That's not just statistics. That's lives changed, futures rebuilt, hope restored where there was none. Anna, now 12, and self-possessed in a way that made Melissa's heart ache with pride, spoke last. 4 years ago, my mom and I lived in a Subaru. We were homeless. I went to school in the same 3 outfits, and kids made fun of me. Then Great-Uncle Robert gave us this cabin and a secret that changed everything. Mom could have kept it all, but she remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to be told, "You don't matter." So she built this place for other moms and kids who feel invisible. 67 families so far. Uncle Robert wrote that blood doesn't make family, character does. This foundation is our family now, all of us, because we chose to help each other. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Melissa spoke last, her words simple, because the moment needed no embellishment. Thank you, Robert, for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. Thank you, Elizabeth, for asking your father to pass on love. I promise I'm doing that. To the 67 families we've helped, you're not your worst day. You're not your circumstances. You deserve good things. This center is for you, for everyone who comes after you, for as long as it stands. The ribbon cutting happened at sunset. Melissa and Anna and James together with scissors, the doors opening to reveal the space they'd built from inheritance and grief and determination to make suffering mean something. Beyond 5 years after the verdict, Melissa Thompson stood on the cabin porch, watching summer fade into autumn. She was 43 now, married to James for 2 years, pregnant with their second child, the first they'd have together, a boy they'd already decided to name Robert. The foundation had helped 187 families, 394 individuals total. The statistics mattered less than the names. Melissa remembered Michelle, who'd become a nurse, Jessica, who was finishing her degree, Brian, who now ran the foundation's maintenance department, teaching others the skills that had saved him. Anna, 14, and fierce, edited the school newspaper, and wrote columns about justice and fairness that sometimes got her in trouble with administrators who preferred students to stay quiet. She'd been accepted to a summer program at Stanford Law School for high school students interested in legal careers. Her grades remained perfect. Her goals remained focused on helping people who couldn't help themselves. The Subaru still sat in the driveway, faded, but maintained a reminder of where they'd been. The collection's remaining 40% stayed on permanent loan to Boise and Tacoma art museums, generating income that funded the foundation's annual budget. The sold 60% had appreciated in trust accounts, turning $38 million into something larger, something that would continue beyond Melissa's lifetime. Her siblings had disappeared into their consequences. Rebecca lost her real estate license and worked administrative jobs she felt beneath her. Christopher served 2 years for assault against a loan shark who'd come collecting. Amanda finished probation and worked retail, having learned nothing except that getting caught had consequences. Kenneth sent cards at Christmas, paid his $500 monthly without fail, maintained distance that felt appropriate for people who'd betrayed each other but were trying to find their way back to something resembling civility. The phone rang the foundation emergency line. Melissa answered. "Robert and Elizabeth Williams Foundation. This is Melissa." A woman's voice shaking. "I'm fleeing domestic violence with my daughter. Someone told me you might have space. I don't have anywhere else to go." "How old is your daughter?" "6. We have space. Can you get to Sandpoint?" "I'm in Spokane. No car." "I'll send someone to pick you up. You're safe now. What's your name?" "Sarah. My daughter's Emma." "Sarah, we're going to help you. Someone will be there in 2 hours. Stay where you are." Melissa hung up and called James, who was already moving toward his truck before she finished explaining. Anna emerged from inside, homework finished, and opened her notebook to the page where she tracked the families they'd helped. She drew 3 figures, Mother-Daughter Foundation volunteer, labeled it Family 188. Another family, Elizabeth would be proud. They sat together on the porch as sunset painted the mountains gold and purple, and Melissa thought about Robert's letter from 5 years ago, the one that had started everything. "Stand firm. The wolves will come. You deserve this." She'd stood firm. The wolves had come and lost, and what she deserved had turned out to be not just the cabin or the money, but the chance to prove that sometimes being broken and rebuilt made you stronger than never being tested at all. Blood doesn't make family. Character does. Melissa had learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. Now she spent every day teaching it to people who needed to hear it. You are not your worst circumstances. You are not what happened to you. You are what you do next, how you choose to rebuild, whether you let suffering make you bitter or use it as raw material for something better. 187 families had learned that lesson in this place Robert built, and Elizabeth inspired, and Melissa transformed from inheritance into legacy. And the number would keep growing family by family, choice by choice, until the day came when no one remembered the woman who'd slept in a Subaru behind a Walmart, only the foundation that helped thousands find their way home.